Meanwhile, there was pandemonium during the announcement of the election results when the Labour Party agents alleged that results were announced for local government that elections did not take place in those areas. And joining us on the news at this time is Ogbobe Fidelis. He's a lawyer and peace conflict analyst. Thank you so much, Fidelis, for talking to us.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening.
Good evening. So for you, what were the key security challenges that you noticed in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states leading up to, and of course, during the off-cycle elections?
The security issue in Bayelsa State to a very large extent has been controlled, and the terrain and ungoverned spaces in Bayelsa being a water, related area is very difficult for the security authority to actually navigate. But I can say that before and during this election in Bayelsa State, the security issue has been actually relatively peaceful, in which the security authority are actually trying to contain, except the issue of kidnapping of an INEC official prelude to the day of that election. There are no serious security challenge before the election in Bayelsa. And during this period of election, I think the security management in Bayelsa State has actually been helpful. Then in Imo State, we know that before now, there is issue of unknown government in the southeast, the issue of agitation in the southeast, in which Imo State appeared to be their headquarters that has been, taking over some part of the local government, which before now we thought that it would be difficult to actually conduct election in Imo State. But save as the impact of the security authorities and security agencies in that area, I believe the security issue in Imo State to a very large extent has been managed. But another issue we are going to face in Imo State is the issue of post-election violence, where we're already hearing that some parties are trying to reject the result. And as a result of that, there may be post-election violence. But security agencies, I believe, they will be able to tackle the challenge and allow any other person who did not believe on the outcome of the election to take the available legal means to him and approach the court of law. And I believe by following the due process of law, we'll be able to manage our security issues. Then in issue of Kogi State, we know that there's issue of this ethnic politics in Kogi State, issue of Igala tribe, the Okun people, which is the West, as well as the Ibwa people, where the governor came from, and the issue of choosing a candidate from the same ethnic tribe from the immediate past outgoing governor of Kogi State. That ethnic problem, to a very large extent, is the one causing the conflict in Kogi State. And in Kogi, there's also issue of a non-Togre syndicate that has been disrupting election. Considering the last election conducted in that state, the level of ammunition and arms we saw during that to a very large extent, is putting everybody in concern. But I believe that the security agencies will, have enough deployment to be able to manage that issue in Kogi State.
Fidelis, before I let you go, there were claims of falsification of results, and some people actually alleged that the security personnel in some of these states were accomplices, and they were there when these electoral malpractice were perpetrated. From where you stand, do you think that that actually happened, and that might, in a way, have skewed the results of the elections in favor of a particular candidate or party?
We were all surprised when we saw that even before the election started, there is issue of already prepared result especially in Kogi State. So to a very large extent, I believe that is the responsibility of the INEC authority, who is the election management body, who are also in custody of this document, to provide explanation. Because the problem we are having in this country may not actually be the issue of the security agency being complicit, but the responsibility of the INEC, the management board, as well as the populace and our political elite, which believe that they can actually disrupt the process, and there is no system to introduce the consequence, to introduce penalty, and punish whoever is responsible for this. Now they say that they want to carry out an investigation on that act, and I believe that they are not in for an investigation at this level. We're supposed to be hearing issue of arrest, how many of them have already been arrested, and start to interrogate them to know what actually, caused this problem. And finally, I want to say in this point that security is everybody's responsibility. And in any nation where there seems to be development and there's no commensurate development on the part of the citizens, especially in terms of education and deepening the concept of democracy, it will be very difficult for the security agents to actually manage the people. If you look at the post-modality concept, you understand that you have to take security back to the people. People have to have a sense of responsibility and allegiance to the law, not by way of compulsion. Because if you force people to obey the law, in the absence of security agencies, they will go back in terms of breach. I believe that the security agency and every other organization or institutions concerned in this election management, let there be a system where there will be a penalty and consequences for inaction or actions that is in contrary to the provisions of the law. And I believe that if we deploy the law to a very large extent, we curtail this type of infraction and criminality that surround our election every time.
Okay, Fidelis, there are also allegations that there were some polling units or some areas where there was no voting, there was no actual voting in those areas, but then results emanated from those areas. And some of the party representatives who felt aggrieved by what they witnessed said that those areas in those states, that those results should be cancelled and a thorough investigation should be done. And some are saying that they should stay the announcement of the results until elections are conducted in those areas. Do you think that should also occur?
Yes, of course. By considering the Electoral Act and the guideline of INEC, for example, a place where the election was able to hold as a result of insecurity, a place where there is violence, the election is supposed to be cancelled and then there will be re-election. But you find out that the persons in authority may be trying to force this down on the people to declare result, and they ask you to go to the court. It is important that the election management body, which is INEC in this instance, should go back to the and ensure that the right thing is done so that we will not implode this country into the issue of post-election violence. So if election have no hold in a place, it is logically speaking, not even based on the legal consequence, that the management body is supposed not to declare results from those areas and allow the right thing to be done. And I believe if they do the right thing, we'll be able to control the emotions and other sentiments that have triggered in this election. So if a place the election has no hold, or there's a place where election was disrupted, or there's issue of violence in any of the polling units, I don't think it is the best thing to do for them to declare results, which will be an infraction to the existing rules as well as the Electoral Act.
Finally, Fidelis, we know that the issue of the use of IRE for the transmission of results was a big contentious issue during the February elections. Now, if you are to give INEC a pass mark in terms of the use of technology and, of course, logistics in ensuring that equipment gets to the polling units as at when due, how would you rate them in terms of their preparation and the use of technology?
There was a report as of yesterday that the deployment was actually apt. Some polling units start voting as much as 8:30 a.m. To a very large extent, there was a pass mark in terms of deployment. Then in terms of deployment of the technology, even some people appear to be skeptical based on the recent judgment. I believe that technology is the best way to go, and the full deployment of that result to a very large extent will ensure integrity, accountability, and transparency in our electoral process. The issue of IRF, I believe there is also the compliance to that IRF, even though some people are no longer interested or even want to rely on the IRF in monitoring the election and using it to test the election integrity. But IRF, to a very large extent, the deployment was up. They started voting at the right time in some places. And I believe that there's also logistic problem which be beyond their control. But to a very large extent, deployment and management of the election, to a very large extent, I think I can give them pass mark.
Thank you so much, Ogbobe Fidelis, for your time on the news. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.